And I just stopped. I was like, wait, what is happening right now? Um, I remember just me and her sitting there just dumbfounded, which has happened many times since then when these moments have occurred with us, and being like, well, that pretty much says something. And so I remember getting out the phone, calling John. I was like, you are not going to believe this, but I know that we need to buy this house, and here is why.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Hey, Jonathan and Ashley, thanks so much for joining us today here on When You Look. Super excited that you guys are on the show. We know for sure that you guys have a wonderful story to share, as When You Look is powered by firsthand accounts, firsthand experiences. But before we jump to your story, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So again, my name is Jonathan. This is Ashley. We've been married now for 21 years. We live in Knoxville, Tennessee with our kids and loving life.
So good to have you guys on. Tell us a little bit about the backstory that leads up to the event that we're about to hear about.
Yeah. So we've been on a crazy journey, God's story for sure. And we struggled with infertility for many years. And God opened the door for us to adopt. And so when we pick up our story here with you, we had already adopted two children. We had our first that we adopted from Africa, and then our second that we adopted from Florida. And the crazy thing is that they were 9 years apart in age. And so it was almost like we had two only children, if you will, because there's a 9 year gap between them. And so, we just kind of prayed and thought, we're not getting any younger, and we've got this age gap between the kids. Let's look for a country that we could adopt sibling groups and we could adopt multiple children at the same time. And so we were told by our adoption agency that Colombia was a great country that favors and is very open to adopting siblings. And so this was in 2018. We did all of our paperwork to try to go and adopt again from Colombia, and this time hoping to adopt at least two children at one time. And we actually got paired with two boys, two brothers, and we were really excited about it. We filled out all the paperwork. We did everything that we were supposed to do, and we just weren't fast enough. In fact, the two boys were paired with a family that they had received that family's paperwork literally a day before ours. And so, as you can imagine, we were very distraught. We were left wondering, why. We thought this was the correct next step for us, and so we were hurt. We were down. We were hurt. We were frustrated. We were kind of confused about God's plan at the time, and so that's kind of where the story picks up. And I'll kind of toss it to Ashley to kind of tell the next part of it.
So at that time, we were living in kind of the greater Richmond area, more on the northern side of it. And it's just how it kind of happens with me at times with the Lord. And I was like, I think we should start looking for houses, which is out of the blue. We lived in a great house. We loved our house. We brought both of our kids home to that house. Literally didn't think we would ever probably move from that house again. That was kind of going to be our final resting place. And so we kind of just started meandering as all people do, just looking at houses for no apparent reason. But there was one that was just right down the road from us. And so we had went maybe on a Sunday just to go look at it, and just kind of was talking about it. And maybe within a couple weeks of that, we got a call from one of our operator friends. Jonathan at the time worked with Chick-fil-A, and they just invited us to come over for a dinner, bring our kids. They had a pool in the backyard. They're like, hey, come over, swim. The kids can play. We'll chat. We thought it was just going to be a normal evening. So we head over. Our friends had cooked a great spaghetti dinner. The girls, Emma and Zayden, loved just swimming in the pool. And so they were out, and Miss Becky was hanging out with them, and they were just having Emma and Miss Becky, a great girls' time out there. And so we kind of got done. We kind of came back inside. The night was winding down. And I always say that's where the story starts. I kind of just dropped this situation in our lives. And so as we were getting ready to leave, they said, hey, you know how you guys have come over for Christmas parties every year? And you just always loved our house. And we're saying, like, if you ever sold it, to let you know. Well, I think we want to downsize. We're going to sell our house. And we feel like we're supposed to offer it to you guys for the same price that we bought the house for. And we were just like, wait, what? Because, I mean, we had been looking, but not super serious. We like this house down the street from us. And I mean, I guess we were sort of serious about it. But again, God had just kind of told us to look for houses. And we're like, wait, for the same price that you bought it for? And they had lived there with
9 years.
9 years, like with a lot of their kids had grown up. They made a lot of memories there, so we just kind of stood there with our mouths kind of dropping. We're like, okay, well, we'll think about it. And I remember us getting in the car and being like, I'm really torn. Like, what is God doing? Like, we didn't even realize we were like, why are we looking at houses? And now we have kind of 2 houses, and the one house needed a ton of renovation. But being of an interior designer background, like that was fun for me. This house also needed updated, but not quite as majorly. And so we just, the whole way home, we talked about it, and we're like, I guess we'll sleep on it and pray about it, because like we did not see this coming. And so the next day, just normal day, John heads off to work, and I'm at home, and I get a call from my friend, and we're just talking, and she goes, okay, I have to say something. And I typically know, like, we have a really close bond, so I know something big is about to come. I'm like, okay, what do you have to say? And I'm like waiting for it. She goes, I had a dream. And you just kind of stop when this friend says that. You're like, okay. She goes, I dreamed last night that Emma and Z were out in your front yard and they were playing, but there were like all of these other kids playing with them. And Emma was holding up the sign that says 6,052. She's like, I don't think you're having 6,052 kids out playing in your yard, but I don't understand it. Does this mean anything to you? And I still to this day remember sitting in our house that we loved, that we were confused while we were looking for houses, going, 6,052, 6,052. I wonder if that's an address to one of these houses we're looking at. And I pull up, it just happened to be the house that we had been to the night before, not the other house. And I look down and the address is 6052. And I just stopped. I was like, wait, what is happening right now? I remember just me and her sitting there just dumbfounded, which has happened many times since then when these moments have occurred with us, and being like, well, that pretty much says something. And so I remember getting out the phone, calling John. I was like, you are not going to believe this, but I know that we need to buy this house, and here is why. And it happens a lot for us in just our faith journey, that a lot of times God does these things and he reveals it to us in these big ways. And sometimes it's to me first, but this time, like, there was no argument. Like, we had literally seen the street address for the house. And so we go back to our friends. We're like, clearly we are going to want to buy your house. And so I think we bought it in September. And we did come in and we did a remodel, and we were able to move in the 1st of November.
Something like that, yeah.
Around the 1st of November, we're like, okay, great. So we get, Emma and Z all settled in the house in their rooms. And we get a call 3 weeks later from our agency in Columbia that says, hey, we've had a sibling group of 3 just come available. They've been in our system for 2 years. But they just came available like yesterday. Would you be interested? I know you kind of said around 2, but what about 3? I just remember being like, oh my goodness, we're going to need this house if we're doing 3. And, we went out to dinner and we talked about it and prayed about it, of course. But we said yes. And they came, we literally left in April to go get them after just hardly living in this house for a few months after the renovation had been completed. And so it was completely just that moment of, oh, that's why we were looking for houses, even though we were content to stay, because our house was a great size, but it would have been tight for 2, let alone 3 more coming, to become this family of 7 that we now are today. So it was a very wild God story for sure.
Wow. Thank you guys both so much for sharing all of that. So much there. Ashley, you were describing how your friend had called you. Tell us, did she have any awareness that you had been over to the house, that you'd been there for the dinner party, and that there'd been that proposition of buy our house for what we'd paid for it?
Like when she called that day, I was like, "Hey, the weirdest thing, happened last night." She goes, "Well, before we go there, like I had a weird thing happen last night." So like I hadn't even shared our weird thing first before she's like, "Well, I had a weird dream." So it's interesting that you had a weird night, and that's when she started to explain it, and it did take me a minute. I'm like, clearly we're not having 6,052 kids, so I'm like, what, does that mean? And just how God works. He's like, street address, and we happened to look it up, and it was the house of our friends who we had loved their home for years. And it was really amazing too, because we wouldn't have probably went for a pool or any of those things with the kids that we have, but one of our kids has cerebral palsy, our second that we had adopted. And so we had kind of been like, this is not a bad thing, like he can have therapy in the pool, so like some of the things that should have deterred us, like God was like, no, here are bonuses. Like, you're going to need this. You're going to, have this opportunity to host in all the small groups. And, oh, wait, by the way, you're going to have more kids. Kind of a situation. For sure. 3 more. We always
Right.
say that our third was a bonus. It was a little boy, and we tell him all the time, we're like, we went for 2, and we got you as our bonus. And we love every minute of it, because I can't imagine just having 2 now that we've had, those 3 extra. It just wouldn't feel complete to only have 4 and not 5 of them.
And the cool God thing that's also part of this is that those 3 kids, their ages fit right in the middle between the 2 kids that we had at the current time. Yeah. And so now they're all about 2 years evenly spaced apart in age. And the 3 oldest are girls, the 2 youngest are boys, and they just fit right in with the 2 that we already had. And it's just been an amazing journey thus far.
And we ended up with 5 kids in 5 years.
Yes.
We like to always say that, 5 kids in 5 years after so many years of infertility.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Wow. So good. So good. So many unique details in there that, as you were saying, God had fully orchestrated. So good. Well, let's round this out with a question that we ask all of our guests here on When You Look, and that is, was it coincidence or God?
Definitely God.
God.
Well, final question for you both. Give us a sense for the impact or how life has changed for you both, since you guys are describing this as a God in action type of moment.
I think we have only grown our faith, and only grown our belief in miracles that occur as well from that. We have an actual wall at our house now that's called the Miracle Wall, where we post every miracle that we see God do. And so, because it's just opened our eyes so big to looking for the miracles and, watching God speak to us and walking now. I mean, we're in a season where we're walking blindly because, God frequently, in this situation gave us these huge, big signs, and he's done it so many times in the year since then. But, it's given us such a stronger faith that now we're walking something blind, but know that a miracle is on the other side of it. And so I think it only strengthened our faith to have our socks blown off necessarily about just this amazing moment with him. And then to start the miracle wall that shows all the miracles he's done, a little bit before that, and then all the way, to this date when we feel lost and confused in what we're doing. We can remember stories like this because we will go to our wall and we'll be like, hey, 6052. Remember that day that happened? Hey, remember, Zayden was supposed to never walk, and like, hey, he's walked. And it's really strengthened our faith to continuously watch God do these big, crazy things so that now we can walk through something we don't know and still have just the same amount of faith that he'll be on the other side of it when we get there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to God cares about every little detail, Even
your address.
He meets us where we are in the moment, whether we have a lot of faith or we're lacking the faith. He meets us where we are. And in this situation, he spoke to us through a friend a friend of our families, and he can speak in so many different ways. He could have spoken directly to us, but he used a friend to speak to us and give us guidance on a decision that we honestly were wrestling with. We didn't know which house to go with. And God said, no, I know exactly which house you're going to need. And he provided, he took care of us. And crazy enough, like Ashley said, 3 weeks after we basically move in, we get the call about these 3 kiddos, and then we're bringing them home 5 months after that. And so we do have these peaks and valleys that we go through in life. And God met us when we were in a valley. We were very discouraged when we lost those 2 boys, basically, that we thought were going to be a part of our family. But God had a better plan. And he blessed us with these 3 kids, and he used a friend to speak to us to be able to choose the right path. And so, as Ashley said, we are in the middle of a situation right now where it's like we don't really see how he's working, but we know that he is working. Why? Because we've seen it so many times before, and this is just one of those examples where he was working behind the scenes that we didn't even know about. And at the right time, at the right place, our friends came and said, hey, we want you to buy the house. And then our other friend said, 6052. It completely solved the equation for us, right? So it's God's faithfulness.
Praise God. Oh, praise God. Thank you guys both so much for sharing that story with us. I am super confident that it will be a blessing to those that hear it. Thank you guys so much for sharing it. Really appreciate it. Great to have you both on. We wish you all the best, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for his glory. When You Look is powered by the stories that guests share. So if you have a story to tell, let us know by going to whenyoulook.com and click on Be a Guest. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who will be impacted by the story. Thanks, and God bless.